changing diapers, outside grilling, or mowing the lawn, or you're just sitting on the couch letting the kids run wild, welcome to the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and today I have such a cool guest with me today. I have Steve. Steve, welcome to the show. Steve's a husband, an author, and a father, of course. Again, Steve, welcome. Super excited to have you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be super fun. I'm really excited to get into it. But before we do get into it, a little bit of housekeeping here. I know that beat's incredible, and I'm just going to let that play out as we go through the business, as they say in the industry. I just wanted to shout out our opening sponsor of the podcast today, For Fathers Apparel. For Fathers is absolutely incredible. If you listen to the podcast for any amount of time, you know I absolutely love For Fathers. What they did is they set out to create dad clothing that is not just stylish, but also practical and comfortable. They understand that dads go above and beyond, and their clothing is designed to keep up with that. A team of dad designers set out to build performance clothing because no other line existed to represent dad. To fit the dad lifestyle, they took our favorite dadisms, donuts with dad, gone fishing, mow low, mowing the lawn, movie night, meat sweat, and so many more, and printed them on the best performing materials. They're light, they're breathable, and they're so comfortable. And they made it to fit the dad line. So with the code YOUNGDAD, that's YOUNGDAD, you save 20% on your entire purchase and help out the podcast tremendously. And the beat that you're hearing right now is also from the Podbeat app. The Podbeat app lets you turn any podcast into a musical experience. It's great for those who are working out, or at the gym, or maybe running, and you need to keep up your cadence and your beats per minute. You open up your favorite podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, start playing your podcast, right? Then you open the Podbeat app to overlay over it, and it'll help turn your podcast into a musical experience, which can just totally enhance your workout, enhance your run, enhance whatever you're doing that you need a little bit of extra oomph from. From lo-fi beats to trip hop to trap to EDM, there's a little something for everyone on the Podbeat app. 100% would recommend. You can download it for free from your favorite app store right now. All right. Well, Steve, thanks for bearing through the opening business there. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your. Is it a book? Are journals considered books?
I think they are a book, but they're their own thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and since this is a guided one that we're talking about, there's just a question on every other page, so it's not the same as writing out 300 pages of, a story which I've done, but yeah, so I can tell you the journal and the story of the journal really ties into, yes, a guided journal for dads, right? From vision to action. Fatherhood for me has been a really cool journey. I've been from boyfriend, right, to then, and my wife was divorced, so I was the boyfriend, then I was the stepdad, and then unfortunately their biological father died in really terrible circumstances, and I was able to adopt them. So I've covered the whole range of from boyfriend to actual official dad. And it was funny, after the adoption, I was waiting, and we don't have this type of a relationship, but I was just waiting for like the oldest to go, "You're not my dad," and I'd hold up the paperwork and say, "Yes, I am," but it's just we don't. That's luckily, happily, that's not our relationship. But just to go back and super brief, my dad had a lot of anxiety, depression, mental health issues. So did my mom, who's bipolar, took a long time to get on the right medication. And when I was a teenager, my dad actually had a nervous breakdown. And it was so serious that they, locked him up for 30 days so he didn't kill himself. And his recovery from that was basically out of state. Even he went back to school, and so when I was a teenager, my dad wasn't around, and that's a lousy time to not have your dad being around. And so that's kind of my introduction to. I love my dad. He's passed now, and we had a good relationship later. And it's like, I took a long time figuring out what being a dad is could be, and also, and this is something that that podcast you talked about, or an earlier one that you wrote about, it took me a long time to figure out how to express myself, because so much of all those feelings, I just bottled them in, said everything was fine. And once I started dealing with that, right, and could express myself, it led to, you know, this dad journal. I do some coaching for fathers. I was the director of a very small nonprofit in Minnesota, Boys to Men Mentoring Network. And, for 10 years, that was working with boys from, 11 to 17, who had everything from, two loving parents, absent parent, mom or dad, the whole kind of thing. So I've spent a lot of time um, outside of my role as a teacher at a community college, working with men, working with boys, around that. I think emotional intelligence comes into place, but also that getting to a place where uh, accepting who you are, I think, can be really tough in the world because we're getting so many expectations of who we're supposed to be, which, the world doesn't know you, the world doesn't know me. And so but to feel all those pressures to be this one way, uh, I, I think it's really important to create spaces for all of us where we can say, wait a second, this is who I am, and this is how I want to show up in the world. And I think I kind of went all over the place there, but in a nutshell, right, I think my mission in life really is to meet people where they are, right, and accept them wherever they're at, right, and then just help them become the person that they want to be, right, not who I think they should be. And yeah, and that's a place where that journal came out of.
Absolutely. I love that. I think it's so cool. This journal's so cool, because it's guided. I think just as dads, let's talk about journaling itself for a second. Us as dads, we hear journaling, we think that's for little sissy baby boys
Yep, or
kind of
diaries.
thing. Yeah, that's not masculine, that's not manly. It's something that I've always liked to do. I've never been uber consistent with it. It's something that I personally always like because I'm a writer at heart. I still am a writer at heart. I still do a lot of blogging. I mean, I put a blog out with every episode almost to accompany it. I do beat writing for the Tri-City Dust Devils, high A affiliate of the LA Angels. And so I do a lot of different things for to keep up with that writing itch I have. I have authored one book, one children's book, a couple more that are just in Google Doc form still. They haven't come to life. I don't know when they'll come to life, but these are just things. So I love writing, and I think journaling so great because it helps you just get everything out. Helps you get just the thoughts you have. It helps you just get thoughts out that you didn't even know were there. Like I did it for probably about 30, 40 days straight. And I recorded all on my blog and on my Instagram page every day. I posted it for people to read. Like just my journal when I would sit down at my computer, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I would get up, have my little drink, a little coffee or something, and I would just sit and write until words started coming out. And I'd put a little timer on for 10 minutes, and whatever came out, came out. Some days I would really be struggling and I would need a prompt. And so I normally would pull off my prompts because I still have it. I don't know how I have it still, but from BetterHelp.com, not a sponsor, but I would pull out my every day I get like a journal prompt like email to journal about. So some days I would use those journal prompts. And journal prompts are really cool because it takes some of that, like, I don't know what to even say, I don't know what to even do. Because
Right.
some mornings your mind's just blank. Some mornings your mind, just as a man, your mind is just blank. I know women who are listening to this and hearing that are like, what? Your mind's blank? Yeah, our minds literally can just be empty and off and not have anything flowing through them at times. Depending on the brain, that's more likely a neurotypical male brain. If it's a uh, If it's a non-neurotypical brain, then it's gonna be a little bit different depending on the person, but it can be a blank slate, for many hours on end, so it can be rather difficult to get there, to get a journal started, and journaling, it's not exciting, it's not sexy. If you tell someone, "Oh, yeah, man, I journal," they're not gonna be like, "Whoa, dude, look how cool you are." Like, they're not gonna be impressed. If you tell a chick and if you're a single dad and you go up to her and say, "Oh, yeah, I journal," she might go, "Oh, that's weird. That's adorable," kinda
Well,
thing, so.
you know what's so crazy about that though is that is such a modern view on writing and journaling for men. I used to have a
Mhm.
joke. I taught English, and I would say to the men in the class, I'm like, okay, this weekend, who's going to stand up and say, I got some poetry to share? And they would just laugh, right? Because there was no way they were going to do that. They would get slayed for not being manly. And then I bring in all of the World War I poetry, written by warriors, and there's poetry written by modern day warriors, and it's not just, me being a man is not just being a warrior, but that writing, for the longest time, for thousands of years, men have been journaling, right? And they've been writing stuff out, and some of the manliest men, Theodore Roosevelt, right? The Rough Rider, president who, did about 20 different things in his lifetime, journaled every day, and so there's this weird thing that I'm totally with you, right? That for some people, they think of journaling and they don't, um, it's a very modern, it's a very weird sexist men. I don't even get it,
Yeah,
because
I
I've
don't
been
know what
journaling for a long time.
y yeah, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know when it happened, when it started to shift. Uh, yeah, and it definitely affected, like, history, you know? I think digital age probably is when it started to get most affected because everything went from paper to digital to everything you're reading isn't written, or now everything you're reading is on a screen kinda thing. I don't think that helped, develop it and whatnot. And
I
so
think
just handwriting got more difficult and things like that. But you're right, like, you look back, Theodore Roosevelt's journal, you look back, the entire Bible is written by majority men, right? And their stories and things like that. And you could take that your viewpoint for whatever you want, but it's like, men have literally been writing since the beginning.
and I think part of it too might be that thought that when you're journaling, you're just pouring out all of this emotional stuff. And you sure can, right? But when
Mhm.
you're journaling, you can also be organizing your thoughts.
Yes.
Making that you can be testing out ideas,
Mhm.
making a to-do list for Pete's sake. I mean, there's so many practical things that can get embedded into journaling, even like recording accomplishments, right? Or recording failures so then you can learn from them. I mean, it's one of the things that I have in the pipeline is and this is actually ties into this too, is interesting. I looked up, if you go to look up books on journaling, so many of them are written by women, which is great. I
Yeah.
mean, and I think I am writing, it's going to be short, probably 80 pages, but on the practical different ways you can journal, all the different benefits from it, from neuroscience to learning and all of these things that I've been looking into, and hitting that practical side, because a lot of us are practical, right? And if we say, hey, look at you, I'm not telling anybody to go journal so they can pour out their feelings. That might happen. That can be therapeutic, right? But I am going to say this: if you get into a practice, where you're journaling and you find one that works for you, here's 20 different ways you can do it. Here's multiple things that you can do to, get different things out of it depending on what you're looking for. And be honest and say, here are some of the dangers, right? Because the dangers of journaling are you can become very narcissistic, right? If you just
Mhm.
only writing about yourself constantly and you can just be spinning in
Yes.
your head, that turns into the manifesto, right? Of the crazy
Mhm.
Unabomber stuff. So, there's the narcissism, there's rumination, right? Where you keep writing about the same thing. So I am not going to go out and say, hey, everybody journal all the time. It's always wonderful. It's like, hey, this is any tool. There's some great things with it. And there's a few caveats. And there are some things that you can do, to get out of rumination, right? Making sure that you're, changing your topic, right? Or, some simple questions can get you out of your own head and the narcissism, right? Writing
Absolutely.
about. So, yeah, God, I got excited there. It's funny. I
No,
mean,
you're
I am,
good.
I
I
am,
like it.
I am passionate about this. It's, um, and it's so inexpensive. Basically, you need a paper and a pen or pencil.
Yeah.
I mean, that
And even that, you don't even necessarily need that. Open up a Google Doc for free.
true. But
You
I
know?
will say this: when it comes to your brain, and this is really important for our kids,
Yes. Yeah.
typing and writing writing activates the motor part of your brain. Typing does not, for whatever reason. So when it comes to retention and things like that, I agree. Hey, if you're going to do it, heck yeah, type it out. If you can, your brain is more engaged when you're physically
Mhm.
writing. So, uh, yeah, I just had to do a shout out for the paper and pen.
100%.
Paper.
100%. No, there's neural links that are created there between paper and pen and memory that create, like you said, that link to retention. That's why that's why when you're reading a book, it can literally suck all of your attention into it. It's just a paper versus when you're trying to read something on your phone or
Yeah.
while you're trying to read something like on a screen. You can easily get distracted because, well, obviously there's distraction, there's ads, and there's flashy things on the side of your screen, and you're on your computer trying to read a single thing, and you could have multiple windows open at the same time and split screens and things like that. So, of course, reading on a computer is going to be a little bit more difficult, but
And not only are there those distractions, but when it comes to reading on paper, your mind remembers location. So this
Mhm.
idea is in the upper left-hand corner. You also know where you are in the book. I'm halfway through. There must be a big chunk. I'm almost done. There's all these messages that come from location that you don't get on a screen. Uh,
True.
I I do some substitute teaching
Mhm.
after I quit at the college level. I'm like, hey, I want to go see what kids are going through and all the levels. And one of the things that I was like, yikes, is how much Chromebooks and kids just strictly reading off of screens.
Mhm.
And they're not writing either. And I'm like, holy cow, I understand why schools do that. But when it comes to the literature, the research on learning, getting paper, getting printed stuff in their hands, having them write things down, it's a little scary. Uh,
Yeah. No, and one thing I love about, like, my oldest daughter is we have a whiteboard. We have many whiteboards around our home, and her favorite one is this new one that she just got for her birthday, but she writes on it so many times a
mm,
day. Like, she'll just write about her day randomly, or she'll write about her plans for tomorrow, and she's 7, so the
that's
English isn't
awesome.
perfect, but she's just writing about it. She just writes it out, and randomly will stop by the board and write, "I love you, Dad," or and just write messages and things like that. And so it's so cute and fun. And some days her whiteboard will be littered, like after a week of being here, like it's just littered with different colors and writing for every day. And it just like tells a story of her week. And it's really cool to see that for her. But no, you're 100% right. The It's a lacking of kids and writing. Like it's just all Chromebook. And if they don't have their Chromebook, they're lost. And
Yeah.
it's like they don't just pick up books anymore. They don't just go to the library to pick up a book on a topic. Like they're taught how to do it when they're really young. Like my daughter's taught how to do it. Like
Right.
they pick a topic and then they go to the school library and then they find books on the topic kind of thing. But outside of that, it's very minimal research and very minimal like book stuff. And I get it because there's so many groups that have instilled book bans. And then when you take it even deeper and you could go even more political if you wanted to, is there's book bans and then history books are history books. They can be from a perspective, but all history books are from that, but they're only from a single perspective. They don't tell the entire story kind of thing. But then also with the advantage of a Chromebook is you as a teacher can manipulate a curriculum. And I don't think a lot of teachers do this, but there are some that have, or schools that do, or school boards that do provide the curriculum, or so on and so forth, that will say, okay, you use this topic or these 10 root websites for this topic, and they're all one-sided. So they're teaching a narrative to the kids and so on and so forth.
So
That's, part of the story. So some of it is that control and things like that. You can call me a conspiracy theorist if you have kids and you don't know, but from my point of view, from I see, especially living here in Washington, that happens all over the place.
well, I can give you some background, and this is when I was teaching English, and
Mhm.
then at community college level, we have an open door policy, which means everybody can come in, right? Whatever their educational level, they take I mean, they've graduated, but they take a placement test. And like in Minnesota, most of the community colleges, and I bet you this is nationwide, 50% of the students aren't ready for college. They need either math, reading, or writing. So I went back and got credentialed in reading. So now I'm teaching English classes, and I'm also teaching adults reading classes. And what's really I didn't know this until I was taking those education classes. Most Americans can't read above the ninth grade level, which is why when you go to the hospital, and my wife is in healthcare, and she'd always run, when she's running clinics, she'd tell all of our documents have to be written at the third grade level and no higher, to make sure that the people coming in can get this information.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, like, I'm college educated, my friends are college educated, they grew up in houses of books. They don't realize how important, having those books around. In they call it, I think it's like the 500,000 word gap. If you take a child who's got books in the house versus one who doesn't, when they get to kindergarten, they get to first grade, the kid with the books in the house, that child is going to have exposure to like 500 or 500,000 more words, or in that repetition. So they're set up for success on the reading. The reading, they're taught how to read until third grade. After third grade, they read to learn. So when you hit third grade and you're not up to level, basically the rest of your college experience is you're going to be swimming against the tide, right? Because they're going to be giving you stuff to read, expect you to learn it, but you're not capable of reading what's coming. And so it's really this, it, it is an unspoken, or I sure don't hear much about it, but you can
Mm-mm.
just Google this and see it. It's like, holy cow. So I don't think it's just two guys ranting about how it should be. I mean, it really
Right.
is just, we are in a, reading is huge. It is, um, and there are things that parents can do from the very beginning. I mean, even having when those babies are chewing on the books, those edible books, I mean, that's like even part of the process, right? They got a book in the hand, that,
Mhm.
then they get to their fake reading and they're just memorizing stuff. All of that is that, you know, steps that lead to being able to read off of the screen or just anything, and take from it, because reading's actually a complex task. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's not just two dudes sitting behind a couple cool microphones and telling
Looking
you all these
sharp.
looking sharp and all these random things. It's the reality that our kids are facing. It's a reality that a lot of our disadvantaged and minority kids are facing across our country. It's a reality that your kids could be facing, but there's things that you can absolutely 1000% do about it. Look behind me. That's just my wife redid the shelf. This whole shelf used to be books from top to bottom. My wife redid it to make it look aesthetically pleasing for, because it's like in the podcast background, and then I ruin it with having my gym bag over on this side, right there. So I ruin things, but it's fine. Uh, just shows an accurate reality there. But those are just some of my books, and like these books right here, these ones. This is like the Curious George, every single Curious George book, all in one
Nice.
big book that I've had since I was a child. One of my favorite books, and of course, book chapter books up here, Bible right here, and then behind this rainbow up here is my book that I've written too. That I wrote about me and my kids and us going to a baseball game and things like that.
Nice.
And their room, one of the shelves in their room is just all the rest of the books. So the books are in their room, reading together all the time. And now my 7-year-old, because she reads at a very high level, she's great at reading. She reads to her little sister all the time, or she'll read to her little cousin. frequently. And so it's really cool to see because she's getting that, and she's fantastic at it. But getting books in their hands, taking them to the library, exposing them to the library. Your local libraries, guess what? They don't cost you a
Oh,
dime.
I know, they're awesome.
They don't cost you a single dime. They have activities, books. You can get free audiobooks. You can get free movies. Free movies, and they always have a section of books they're just getting rid of. So they're like $1 or $2 if you need to start creating your library at home.
Well,
Go to yard sales, buy books for 25 cents each, kind of thing. Or if they have a stack of books, be like, I want to buy all these for $5. They'll be like, want to buy books? Sure, I guess. I didn't think we were going to make anything off of these. So their books are available. And even here around like my neighborhood here in the Tri-Cities, there's always these free book little like pull down thingies.
yeah.
It's take a book, leave a book kind of thing. So you can take a book and you leave a book. And there's just these stands all over random places, but they're really cool because they always have books in them to encourage that reading. There's one in front of pretty much every school, which is really cool. Get a book, take a book kind of thing, and it's really cool.
And when it comes to like your children and reading, the recommendation that I would have, and I've given to plenty of people, is absolutely one, go with their interests, right? So if they like
Yes.
sports, great, get the sports biographies, whatever their
Yes.
interests are. Who cares? Even if you don't care about it, right? If that's their interest, find them a book on that. And then the other thing is, and this is funny because my wife and I would actually, argument's a strong word, but we would bump heads on this because our youngest at the time, he's 16 now, really liked the graphic novels, right? Just basically the comic books that are thicker, like 120 page. And he kept reading them, and I'm like, awesome. She wanted him to move on to chapter books, right? And I totally get why she would. He's reading, he's enjoying it. I'm like saying, hey, you know what? He's reading, he enjoys it. You want to keep the love for reading. You don't want to turn it into only read because you're going to get an award at the end, which is terrible because as soon as the award ends, the reading ends because they weren't reading it for enjoyment. So those things that always drive me crazy when the schools have a read these 10 books over the summer and you get a pizza party. And it's like, well, don't read because there's a pizza party. Read because these are awesome stories. And that way kids will keep reading. So anyways, he kept reading the graphic novels, reading them. And then one day, it's like, boom, he's got this adventure story of this, young guy who becomes a knight, and he's reading chapter books. And it was just his time. Boom, it switched. And, the kid reads 400-page, fantasy novels. Plenty. So I think giving your kids permission to read whatever they want, as long as they're reading, that's a win. And, the graphic novels count. Absolutely, they count. And it was fun. And eventually she's like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
When she got to the books and saw.
That's something that I've always done with my daughters is whenever we go to the library, I just let them not run wild, but essentially like kind of just run through the
Yeah.
picture book section. And I have to guide my older one because like the picture books are not really her level and she knows that. She still picks out a couple, but I also point her to like the first grade level books or the second grade or the third grade level books, kind of whatever she's looking at. It's point her to that section. I'm like, okay, you need to pick at least one from this section that looks interesting, or it has a number 1 on it, or it has a number 2 on it, kind of thing, so that she's reading something that's actually going to challenge her because she likes a challenge because she'll speed through these books. So she needs something that's gonna, make it so we don't have to go to the library again tomorrow.
Well,
Kind of thing.
I did something with my at an older age when my son was about 15, and this was neat. I took him to a bookstore and I said, hey, look, I want you to get 3 books from 3 different sections.
Hmm.
He ended up getting 2 because he's like, that's all I could find, and he had the fantasy at home, so he didn't need to look in that section. But he went and grabbed a business leadership book, which like totally blew my mind. He's never talked about leadership. He's talked about business a little bit. He picked that. I'm like, that was interesting, right? Get a little insight about what he's thinking about. I didn't know. And then he picked this big, thick, like 800-page biography of Napoleon. And I'm like, yeah, he's thinking about it. I'm like, okay, because a friend of his is a huge history buff. and is reading the Napoleon one. So he ultimately didn't get the Napoleon book. We did pick up the leadership one, which I still don't know if he's read yet, right, or gone into it. But it was neat to, those two things popped up, which never would have happened if
Mhm.
we, and you could do this at a library. It doesn't have to be a bookstore,
Yep.
right? But to say
Absolutely.
go to different sections and you get this cool little window on what your children are interested in,
Mhm.
which is fun and it's exciting and it's very organic, right? Natural. It's, instead of saying, what are you interested in? They actually will pull out a book, right, in this area and say, hey, look, this is what I'm interested in, and then
Mhm.
you can have that conversation.
Exactly. Or what even just catches their eye, like, that
Yeah.
could grab their attention kinda thing. Like, for me, I like to do it to help myself, like, with, like, the books I write and stuff that I'm working on too. It's like, okay, this is what's getting my kids' attention, so it's probably getting other kids' attention too, kinda thing. So what is it about these books that's doing that? So it's interesting from that perspective. But also, yeah, it can spur a conversation, can spur an interest, it can spur all those things, and it's really cool to see what your kids are into. But definitely getting books in their hands, engaging them at a library from a very young age, very important, and keep engaging them from a young age until they're older, and keep encouraging them. Make library trips a thing that they're like, "Hey, we haven't gone to the library in 2 weeks. Can we go? I finished all my books."
Well, and here's the other thing too. Do they see you reading?
Mhm.
And that could be the newspaper, right? A magazine, a sports magazine that you like, or but just to see dad, right? See mom actually taking time off away from a phone, away from a screen, reading a book, reading something. I think modeling is huge, right? It says, hey, read a book. It was like, well, you're playing Candy Crush on your phone. Why should I, read a book when I could be playing some game too, to that
Mhm.
model the enjoyment of it.
Exactly. Additionally, like, with that, like, are you reading with them? Are you reading to them? Are you engaging them in a story? My
Yeah.
girls love it so much when I get into a story with them and I read it and I change the inflection and the voice, and the characters all get a slightly different voice and things like that. Like, it's so much fun for them. And they love it. They love little story times before bed, and it's enjoyable. So are you setting the modeling the example by reading just in general? Do they see you reading? And then also, are you reading to them and with them? So, but man, I did not think we were gonna get into a conversation about reading.
I know it's
That's
like
not
today's podcast sponsored by reading.
reading, but I wanted to jump into the guided journal here a little
Yeah.
bit, and I read through it. I haven't worked through very much of it. I worked through like 2 pages of it, because I put it on my desk and I put it face down and I slid it underneath the little platform my
Okay.
laptop's on, and I kind of just set it and forget it. I have ADHD, but I knew where it was the whole time. But I went through the whole thing actually just last night, reading through it, and there are some questions that really stood out to me that um, kind of wanted to highlight here and maybe talk through just
Yeah.
briefly. I probably highlighted or dog eared 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we may not have time for all 8, so I'll jump around a little bit, but it's really cool how it starts. It starts from the very beginning, and it says why journal, why guided, how to use guided journal. So it answers some of those questions. And then the table of contents is really cool to kind of look at all the different things that are going to be talked about. And for this in general, do you encourage people to start cover to cover, jump around as they see fit, or how would you invite them to work on it? Because I've noticed that there's every section has a kind of what have you learned so far from this last set of questions
So
kind of thing.
there there's a order to the questions, but it is not mandatory absolutely at all. The one thing, and I'm doing other journals. They always start out with the vision question. I do think that's a really valuable one to do first, right? What do you? Because if you can create your vision, here's the father that I want to be, or this is what I want, you know, my parenting to be. Well, now you've got something to bounce off of, to push off of. So I do recommend doing the vision question first, and then if you want to, and if you're the type of person who likes to, just kind of move through, you can, you know, go through an order. But the reason there's a table of contents in there, too, a big reason, is so you can open up, say, like you said, you get up this morning and you're tired, right? Your brain's not quite working, or whenever you're doing this. But yeah, you can open up the table of contents. I have shorter versions of the questions. Absolutely scan through, find the question that's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, that if whichever question kind of grabs you in the moment, go straight there, because that's going to make it easier, right? And so I would absolutely, I'm a fan of, the questions are on top, content, skim through them, go with one that grabs you. If not, I think sometimes, and you mentioned this earlier too, you just got to start, and you might put a little fluff. I don't know what I'm going to write about what I want dinner to be like. And then, you do that long enough, and there's this kind of funny thing about your brain, right? That after you start boring your brain, it'll kick out something interesting.
Yes.
And then you go, oh yeah, we used to joke around at supper when I was a kid, and those were really fun. Oh, I want more joking around at my supper. What can I do? So when it comes to the journal, I think any journal, it's yours, right? So you find the system that works for you. I'm actually making a little video in the next week that's going to go on along with the book, that's just saying, if you like a question but you want to modify it, it's your journal, right? So maybe you work evenings, so you don't have dinners. Well, you cross out dinner and put in breakfast, right? You can change a question to fit your life better, right? This journal has 2 pages of the question, 2 pages, and then there's a spot for putting an action step, right? So you can take something from there and go, oh man, yeah, I want to try this, or I want to remember this. You don't have to fill up 2 pages if you don't want to. You can stop a quarter of the way through. You feel like I got something out of it, maybe date it, and then heck, 2 months later, you can come back to that same question, and maybe you've got some new insights, or maybe you're like, holy cow, I tried that thing and it's been working, or I tried it and it didn't work. So, I mean, I think really, go with what's working for you, try things out in it, and it's your journal. I'm big on, find out what works for you, try some different things. And if you'd see any of my books that I like, and so regular book, I write in them. It's like, hey, that's mine. I want to make sure I get the most out of it. And
Absolutely.
So that's what I'd say.
Absolutely. I love that. And one additional thing just to add on to that is one thing that I personally like to do, or when I was journaling, for that consistent 30 days, one thing that I like to do was I would pray, obviously, when I wake up, do it anyways, but I would specifically pray before I journal. And then I would turn on worship music to play just kind of as like my prelude behind it as I'm journaling, just to help, awaken, like, and set a tone, like, for the spirit to come in and invite that presence into what I was doing. And that's something that worked for me. It doesn't work for everyone, depending on your belief system, but that's something that I felt really powerful for me. So one thing that you could do, if that is something that's up your alley as well with this, is you could just pray and then open to a random page. Pray and open to a random page kind of thing. See where the fingers guide. See where those things like, because I'm not going to promise you, because I don't want to make that promise, but there's a pretty good chance that it's not going to be coincidental to where you open up to post prayer and meditation to be able to get something very powerful out of what you're going to do that day. If you go into it, and this is my biggest takeaway, this is my biggest thing with journaling, go into it with intention, go into it wanting to get something out of it. And it can be something specific, it can be something general, but if you go into it with very minimal to get out of it, then you're only going to get minimal out of it. But if you go into it completely open-minded or with an intention, like this journal specifically, if you specifically go into this journal, that you're going to get, every page, every prompt that you fill out, you're going to get something out of it that's going to make you a better husband, father, friend, or person. Then you're going to get those things out of it. 100% I believe that. 100%. If you're journaling to be more intentional, if you're journaling to be more patient, more kind, more loving, whatever it may be, and that's what your intention is, those are the things that your brain's going to spark. Those are the things that you're going to get out of it. So those are some things that I feel are really powerful about journaling in general.
And one of the things I was thinking of along those lines, on page 1, I actually have a space where you can glue in a picture of your family,
Mhm.
right? For a favorite picture that you like, right? For that intention, like, to get grounded, you know, journaling can ground you, right? You might be just your brain's not focused. You can go to the question and it can help ground you potentially, or setting up beforehand, looking at that picture, thinking about what your intention is. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which I think you'll like based on what you've been saying, right? He's a famous German minister during the World War World War II. He had the Nazis, made Christianity illegal, and so he's underground seminary. And one of the things that he had his students do, and he wrote about this, is focusing on one verse for the week and keep coming back to it every morning, because in the more that you do that, right, you go deeper each time, right? So sometimes if you get that right, finding the practice that works for you, but right, even coming back to that same question, you might it might seem like I said everything, or it might just be too that the next day something happened in the last 24
Mm,
hours, your brain's kicked it around a little bit, right? And you can come back to that question and, go even deeper and build off of what you've done.
yeah, and it's like I said, it's not coincidence, you know? Higher powers that be, whatever you believe in, for me, it's God. God doesn't make any mistakes. God doesn't make coincidences happen. If you're looking, if you're praying and you're seeking, you will find. If you have your action behind your faith, then your actions will lead you to the answers that you're looking for majority of the time, as long as you remain open to it. But if you go through your day and let's say maybe one thing you do with this, and this is a great idea, something you could do with this guided journal, is maybe you just take a picture of your page for that day,
Oh, yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing, and you just sit on it all day. You go through work, and that's just kind of your prompt. Maybe you put it in your phone as like a reminder. Who know? However you want to do it, you put that in your phone as your reminder. So then you just take it out all day. But if you go about it that way, you will find the things that you're looking for throughout your day, your opportunities. Like one thing to a page I just opened to, one of the doggy ears that I had here. What are 3 things you could do that would take only 15 minutes but make your day, week, or month better? If you spent a whole day just kind of sitting on that from morning till night, you'll find 30 things that could
Yeah.
make your day, week, or month better, you know? Uh, if you go and sit on, and let me just give an example of this. One thing that I kept talking about, I talked about it with my wife, I talked about it with other podcast guests, I talked about it with some friends and family. I'm like, yeah, I have a bunch of podcast episodes that this is kind of my idea for them. This is how I want to order them, but I don't know the order I want to order them in. And then I was sitting on that for about 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 days, right? Sitting on it, thinking about it, thinking about it. I had no clue how I was going to organize it and organize these episodes. And then finally, I'm sitting in the steam room one day at the gym, and then all of a sudden it hits me like a freaking train. And it was just a moment of inspiration. I was like, whoa. And so as soon as I got out of the steam room, I wiped off my hands because you've been in the steam room, everything's sweaty. Every body part, every inch of skin is sweat. So it's kind of hard to navigate your phone. But as soon as I got into the locker room, dried my hands, like I wrote all this down immediately. Because if I don't, I forget. But I was like, whoa, like I've been specifically thinking about this and now it came to me. Much like the whole podcast in general, is that's exactly how the whole podcast happened. Is if you've been listening for a really long time, my brother Aaron and I started this podcast. We were co-hosting together. And, times change, things like that. He gave me the blessing to keep it going, of course, but it just kind of happened one day where we were talking about it and talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And then finally, the idea just, I was looking and looking and looking, and then boom, the idea just comes one day when I'm working at a bank. The idea, I used to work in a bank before I work in mental health now, clinician, but before that, I worked at a bank and I'm sitting at my desk doing my boring, stupid job at the bank, the most unfulfilling job in my entire life. And it just hits me. Like it literally just hits me. 30 episodes hit me. title, logo, image, everything just
Wow.
hits me. Uh, and you could call it whatever you want. It's like, oh, well, you thought about it long enough. You brainstorm, workshopped ideas. No, I hadn't. I hadn't done any of that stuff yet. And it all just kind of hit me. And that's what I'm saying. I was intentional. I was looking. I was waiting. I was patient. I would put ideas down. I didn't like the ideas. I would put ideas down. None of them felt right. And then finally, all the ideas kind of culminated together for what you have now, 130 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus episodes later. That's like, now we're here. It's crazy how it all starts, but make no mistakes. It's not just me doing it. It's not just little OJ doing it. It comes from a higher place. Every single episode before I log on, I pray. I pray that I get something out of it. I pray that you get something out of it. And I know I talk a lot about prayer. I talk a lot about God. I talk a lot about Jesus. Well, that's part of who I am. God, America, and baseball. Three of my favorite things. And of course, family and being a father are also in that mix. They're all kind of 1A, 1B kind of type of situation. So they're all important to me. But all those things are being important to me because those are what I was allowed, essentially, kind of like going back to that reading conversation, what I was allowed to get into. Like I had the space to love baseball and love baseball hard, to where I was probably in sports, like really hard, to where I was invited to fantasy football leagues when I was like 10 years old because
Really?
I knew football so well. I knew baseball so well. Like I knew these things so well already because I was allowed to know them. And so I'm beating my young men's leaders. I'm beating men in the congregation that I know, just wiping the floor with them in these fantasy football leagues and stuff. And it was so fun for me as a kid. I know they weren't letting me win. I know they wanted to win and give me some humble pride. But it just shows, like, if you let your kid have the space to grow and you just hop on that train and you support them and you're unconditional with them, then they're going to grow in these different fields and in these different aspects. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Well, yeah, absolutely. To have that space, right? And look at you were at a spot where you were, I guess, sounds like even encouraged. You were encouraged, right, by the men around you, right, and I'm sure the women too, but encouraged to join those leagues. Imagine that being that young, right, and going out and being with older people, and for them to say, "Yeah, let's bring in this kid who's whooping our butts." I'm
Yeah.
sure there was a couple who were like, "Dang, why did we let this kid in here?" But that was great that, um, and like you've sports have kept with you, right? Because I think you mentioned earlier that you're writing for the was it a
Yeah.
minor league baseball team?
Yeah.
You're
Sports
doing
are a
around
big part of me, big part of my life, a big part of just my coping as an individual. So,
yeah, and right, and some of our kids' passions will be lifelong, and some
mhm,
of them will burn for 6 months, and they'll go out, and that's fine too. Too.
absolutely.
That should be, and I know sometimes it can be like, oh, how long is this interest going to last? Right. And how much do I want as a parent to invest in my kid's interest? And there's got to be a balance there, right? Because if all of a sudden, um, you know, I know just from a financial point, right? It's like in going to Disneyland can be awesome and amazing, right? And kids things. And then there's some ages too where it's like, man, you know what? For our family right now, nope. And it's where am I going with this? I think we want to support our kids, and we always have to do that in the balance of what's working for our family right now, and you know what I mean, what we can do. And I think um, there are always inexpensive ways to support our kids' interest in stuff, right?
Absolutely.
The library, doing pictures, drawing, I mean, there's a ton of things that we can do to support our kids that don't involve you know you don't have to spend a lot of money all the time, though there are certain things like sports, gymnastics, hockey, and things like that, which are going to pinch your wallet.
Yeah.
We're in Minnesota, and if you're a hockey mom or dad, holy cow. I mean, they're up at 5 a.m. to get
Bless
ice
your heart.
time,
Bless your
or
heart.
right, or at 10 o'clock at night to get ice time because all the adults get the good ice times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm glad our kids didn't like hockey. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
was just like,
no, hockey
whew,
is. We have
bullet
hockey leagues
dodge.
here too, and yeah,
Yeah, but for the parents to do that, man, kudos, right?
yeah.
And
Shout out to all you travel ball parents. Shout out to all
yes,
you parents that are just signed your kid up for a sport thinking, oh, it's just going to be practices, so on and so forth. You didn't think you were going to be waking up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday to drive 3 hours for a tournament. So yeah, shout out to you guys because no, absolutely not. I say that, and it'll probably be me here within the next 10 years. So since my kids are young, but
and the theater moms and dads, right? Because our oldest was really like musical theater, and we were, you know, he'd get into shows, which would be a couple weeks of rehearsal, to be driving him to rehearsal 20 minutes away and dropping him off and coming back. And
running lines with him. I did theater, so I know how I was that kid, but making my dad run lines with me,
nice.
making listen to the same song 1,000 times so that I could get the vocals down, so that I could get the timing down, the words, the presence, and things like that. So yeah, bless parents with kids who are in these high commitment activities.
Yeah.
But all right, let's get this thing wrapped up. Any closing thoughts here about the journal, about anything we've talked about today that you want to share before we get wrapped up?
Yeah, just this. I think we are so busy that we oftentimes don't have time. We don't make the time to stop and think about what we're doing. We get on autopilot, and it makes sense, but it doesn't bring out our best. And whatever your practice is, obviously I've got the journal, but I think be able to take some time, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but even 10, 15 minutes to build that into the day where you can stop and think about, okay, wait a second, what really is important? What do I want to, what's the parent that I want to be? What's the dad that I want to be? And am I moving in that direction, or am I moving away from it? And even something like 10 minutes can be enough, like, oh wait, ooh, I'm not okay, stop that, and small changes. So that would be the two big things, right? Is taking time, and if you go, oh crap, dinners aren't what I want them to be, or something else, start with small changes,
Yes.
right? Because big changes, they're hard, they rarely follow through. You do a small change, you build on success, so take some time, make small changes so you can get that taste of success, and small changes over time will lead to big change.
Absolutely. I think that'd be something really cool too, because I know after every prompt in here, there's a small section for key insight or small action step, but maybe even pulling that up a few lines to spell it out so you can put more of those small steps in every section would be really cool here, just so that you can start to break it down and put it into SMART goals,
Right.
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, to be able to measure those goals and things like that would be really cool. Uh, that's just my thought here. But you could also add it in yourself. You could put in small steps to take, and you can make it however you want to make it. But 100%, put it into small steps. Something I've preached since the very beginning of the Young Dad podcast here is take small steps, bite it off into bite-sized pieces. That's why I love the question about the 15-minute. What can you do in 5 to 15 minutes that will make a positive change today, in your week, in your month? Do those small things. Those small things become big things over time, because 5 minutes turns into 10. 5 more turns into 15. 15 turns into 20, and so on and so forth. So all those things, they add up, and that's how you create your habits, is by small steps and biting them into bite-sized pieces that you can actually do and attain every single day. So I love that. All right, let's get this thing wrapped up. Maybe. I'm just waiting for the beat to play here. Here we go. All right, so to wrap us up here on the podcast, I just want to shout out to all of our affiliates, our partners of the blog, sponsors, whatever you want to call them. They all hold the same titles to me. All those things mean the same thing. And if you don't know who we're working with or what we have going on, we have some great things coming down the pipe or in the pipe right now. We have, of course, Forefathers. We have Dad Bod Apparel. We have Dr. Harold for strength and conditioning if you're looking for a coach to make some healthy life changes, and so much more within our link tree to be able to explore. So go and check that out, and make sure you also, while you're there, subscribe, like, follow, do all the things you can to show your love for the podcast. And again, our opening beat and our closing beat are brought to you by the Podbeat app. So, Steve, to close us out here, 2 questions. Actually, let's just do it with one here. To a father who's young, he's brand new, just had his little baby, first baby. Let's say he's young, 20 to 25. I became a father when I was 22 years old. My dad became a dad when he was 21. My brother became a dad when he was 19, 20. So in our family, we run young when it comes to being a dad. And so for you, that young father with all your experience and expertise and your, life experience as well, what's a couple pieces of advice you would give to that young father who's just scared, nervous, and really excited, but really scared for this new chapter of life?
Number one, get in a practice of breathing. Right, and I'm not even talking meditate. I'm just thinking. You should be part of us. All of us should be terrified when we're holding a brand new baby. It's scary, right? So breathing, but understand this: that youth has some benefits, right? That you're going to be able to deal a lot better with the lack of sleep as a young man than you are as a 40-year-old man, right? So that inexperience, sure, you can catch. Oh, I'm sorry, I went over there. That youth can be a benefit. You're going to have more energy, right? So there's a strength to that. And there's plenty of neighbors and men out there too are interested in helping you, right? Whether that's at a church or the neighborhood barbecue. I think if with reaching out, and this can be hard for men, right? But reaching out and asking for help. We were just at a barbecue the other night. The guys came in twins, and they're like a month old. And basically, we got a really nice neighborhood, but there's 5 or 6 different households saying, you need help, let us know. So, in the house, in the apartments, those nice people around you who you smile to or whatever, talk to them. And sometimes even somebody might bring you a meal, or somebody might watch the baby so you can take a nap. Those kind of offers, take people up on their offers to help you. You're not meant to do all of this on your own.
I love that. Those are 2 great messages right there. Take advantage of your youth, love your youth. That's one thing that I still love about having kids and being super young, was that I have so much more energy, so much more. I'll get to experience so much more life with them. I'll
Yeah.
get to experience so much more with them. Like my dad's in his 50s. Sorry, Dad, don't mean to out you on your age there. But his grandkids he started having grandkids when he's in his 40s because of me. You're welcome, Dad. I know you love your granddaughters, but he's super young. He was in his 40s, and now he's a grandpa in his 50s. Like, and he still has so much energy, kind of thing for them. And so it's really cool being able to see, like, okay, well, when I'm 50, there's a chance that I could have grandkids, and that would be sick, kind of thing. But also, the one thing that having kids really young that not really made people talk about is that they're more than likely going to be out of the house while you're in your 40s,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it's a secret. Don't tell the old people that are having kids when they're older, late 30s, 40s, and whatnot. It's super cool. But again, also your second thing you said there, community. Community is everything. Having people, it takes a village. Find your village and be a part of your village. Be an active part on your village. Give as much as you get from the village when possible. But give to it, and you'll be able to reap the benefits of it as well. Super important. All right, Steve. Well, that's everything I got. Go ahead and tell the people where they can keep up with you. I don't know when or if this guided journal's out yet, but where they can find that when it does release.
Oh yeah, the guided journal is out. And so if you go to journalinsights.com, that's where you'll be able to find the guided journal for dads. I've got one coming up with moms with teenage boys. high school graduate. I got a lot of family-oriented ones coming out in the next couple of months too. But if you go to journalinsights.com, you'll find that. And I'll be putting some videos there. So that's going to be, not just a shopping place, but there'll be a lot of information on journaling, tips, things like that, just information that help you get the most out of it. And so that's for the journal. If you want to see sort of the coaching side of that, at steveanderson.coach, where I'm revamping it now too, to put more resources. Actually, there isn't resources now. It's a sales thing, which I'm totally changing and loading it up with resources for dads. So whether you're interested in that coaching part or not, I don't care. I want to have resources there so you can go, oh yeah, here are some resources for dads from a dad, right? That is like, hey, I think this is valuable. Check it out.
Yeah, no good podcast that could fit that resource.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yes.
But thank you to all our listeners for listening today. I hope that lawn is looking pristine so you can give it that good old dad stance and that look over. You can just appreciate it. And that dad stance, arms crossed, New Balances out past your shoulder length. Enjoy that lawn. Hope you enjoyed that meat you grilled up. Hope you enjoy letting the kids run around. Go clean that living room, or don't. It's okay if it's dirty. It means they had fun. But whatever you did today, we hope you enjoyed your snack, your juice box, and the conversation we had today. Steve, thanks for joining me. Thank you guys for listening, and make sure you guys go wherever you can. If you're on Apple, leave 5 stars, leave a review. If you're on Spotify, leave the 5 stars. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like. Do all the things that help to support the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. And until we see you next time, right here on the podcast.